Welcome back to Croco Nation. It's your boy Navar, and today we're going to go over how to make Latin tech house drops, like artists such as Hugel, San Pancho, and many more. We're going to start off by going over bass lines and different types of bass lines that are commonly used, and then we're going to go over percussions, drums, and other basic concepts on how to achieve that Latin house style. All right, so I prepared something short and sweet here, so I'm really going to focus in on the drop on this lesson, but it's going to be a build-up and then just straight to the drop. So let's go ahead and hear it.
Aquí todos vinieron sin juicio, con la mano en la pared que hizo, peleando sin ningún permiso, hasta el piso, hasta el piso. Todos sabemos cómo es, para los tiempos del matiné. Sabes que si llego se pierde, no arreglan él, no arreglan él.
All right, the first thing we're going to go over is bass lines. So there's going to be two types of bass lines that are commonly used. One is an octave bass line and one is an arpeggiated bass line. So let me kind of dive in and explain what each one does. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, I call it an octave bass line. And so what that means is that one of the notes is going to be a higher octave, one of the other notes is going to be on a lower octave. So for example, I have a pattern here, right? And this is a commonly used pattern for Latin tech house that I've seen from Hugel and other DJs. But let's play it so you can hear it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to bring this E2 note to E3, and we're going to do that throughout all of these notes here. And if you notice, I left the top one, or the higher octave note, a little longer. And the reason I did it is just for preference. I thought it sounded better. No particular reason why I did it. So moving forward, when you add the higher octave to the lower octave, it adds a little bit of movement to the bass. So let's go ahead and hear this. So you'll hear this in that new song. I think it's called Stay High or something like that from Diplo and Hugel. Hold on, I'm Googling this. I'm on my phone right now. Gonna see if I can find that. Yeah, it's called Stay High. I was right. The second type of bass line that's commonly used is an arpeggiated bass line. So what an arpeggiated bass line is, it's just a chord. Like for example, I have here an E minor triad, and you just play one note at a time. That's it. So it sounds something like this. Real basic Latino, Latin reggaeton type of bass line, but you can use it in house music, specifically Latin house. And both of them sound like this. So I just did a quick several bars here just to demonstrate. So let's look at the octave bass line first, and then we'll look at the arpeggiated one so you can hear the difference. You'll notice that the octave bass line sounds more of like kind of a Tulum house bass line kind of a feel. And then the arpeggiated bass line sounds more of like Farruko, kind of Miami. You'll see what I'm talking about. Right? That's the octave bass line. This is the arpeggiated one. So you can see the difference or tell the difference. Obviously, I think the arpeggiated bass line has more of a Latin flavor, but just with the drums and everything, that all the other elements that I'm going to show you or talk about in just a second, can make the octave bass line sound more Latin. So let's go ahead and dive into drums and percussions. So next we're going to talk about drums or different types of percussions that I use to kind of get that Latin feel. And it's pretty simple, guys. What you want to do is you want to have some sort of congos or bongos, nice rhythm, right? Cuban style. It can be salsa, merengue, whatever you want. There's different loops for this. I'm going to have some in the Casa Volume 1 pack coming out, but you can use whichever ones you like. The one I use for this track is this. It's a little top loop that we have here. And you can see it adds all that flavor, right? Another thing you want to do is add some sort of hi-hats, right? Just to really have that house kind of element or house feel. What I did here is 1/16 hi-hats. I just messed with the velocity to get that groove. I also have some open hi-hats here, right? So those are some of the things that you want to layer to get a Latin feel, but also a house feel at the same time. And sound something like this, which is a part of the demo that I played earlier. Let's say I turn this off. Still sounds pretty cool. But it adds that little flavor that you're missing if you add that bongos. All right, so the next component is going to be vocals. My personal opinion, Latin vocals work best. And I just wanted to spice and grab some vocal samples just because I'm not a singer. So I can't create my own Latin tech house vocal sample, but we'll get there one day. Who knows? I may turn into Mark Anthony tomorrow. So what I did here is I soloed the vocal, and this is the vocal that I use, and then I'm gonna show you how I chopped it up. So let's go and hear it first.
Aquí todos vinieron sin juicio, con la mano en la pared que hizo, perreando sin ningún permiso, hasta el piso, hasta el piso.
So I use that, and I just to make it my own or to kind of switch things up, I just split or cut a couple of the phrases that I liked, right? So let's go into the drop, and I went ahead and I processed this by taking out a lot of the high end and low end and really just kind of filtering it so it sounds muffled. I had a good amount of saturation to make it sound kind of gainy, CLA vocals, of course, and then LFO, right? It's just to do a little side chain action. So after I chopped it up, it sounds something like this. Right? So when you have it in the song, it sounds something like this.
Como ve, para los tiempos del matiné, sabe que si llego se prende, no arreglan él, no arreglan él.
See how it has that little Latin element to it? So vocals are definitely a big component in Latin tech house. Typically, what you see in Latin tech house, as an overview, is it's mainly bassline focused and percussion focused, right, to get that groove going. And then a lot of Latin vocals are used, right? They chop it up and they have like a phrase or something like that. But if you listen to Latin tech house, you'll notice that the use of synths or leads are really not as common as regular tech house or any other type of electronic dance music. And so when you do use synths or leads, I recommend to kind of keep them simple, right? For example, I know you can kind of hear this in the background, but I added this sample from Splice and I just chopped it up and made it to where it's just like a stab. So it sounds like this. Right? And it just kind of has a little flavor so it doesn't get boring. And it's just kind of in the background, not really dominant, right? I kind of layered it in between the vocal so that way it doesn't get in the way of this vocal down here. But it sounds something like this together. So it's kind of like a call and response technique, which I'll get to in another lesson, but that's essentially what I did here. It was a call, and then the response is the vocal, right? The call was the synth, response was the vocal. If you guys found this helpful, please consider following. If you guys like to support the channel, we have a link down below to croconation.com. I have a Perreo sound pack that has 150 samples and 50 Serum presets. These are reggaeton samples and presets. However, you can use this for Latin tech house. I do have a Casa Volume 1 sound bank on the way. So once again, thank you for tuning in and have a great day, guys.